Life can change in an instant. For many wheelchair users, the struggle to push forward is a daily challenge. After years of development and countless prototypes, we created Rib Grips, the revolutionary wheelchair hand rim covers with built-in ribs for ultimate grip and comfort. No more slick surfaces, no more heat burns, just pure, reliable grip. Rib Grips, empowering you to push forward with ease. Rib Grips. Get a grip on your freedom. Discover the difference. Visit ribgrips.com and use promo code GRIP today. You just found the perfect product that helps with staying cool during hot summer runs. No more gross warm water. Stay cool with this product from Gear Handle. This hydration tube cover helps keep your water cool and easily accessible. Stay hydrated during those long summer runs or even delay from freezing in the winter. Plus, they're compatible with various brands of water bladders and come in various colors. Visit gearhandle.com and use promo code H2O today. This is a Rogue Media Network podcast.
Coming up on the Payoff, we don't get to do in person enough, and man, this is up close and personal. My man Chris Asikis, he actually works here in Central Texas, works at Baylor as a counselor, came up as a drug and alcohol counselor. Actually, he came up as an alcoholic and a drug addict, and he did as many drugs as he has degrees. Actually, he did more drugs than that. But today he's 14 years sober, and he has quite a story to share. A 12-step guy who I can really relate to, and a guy who, after having this conversation with him, it reminds me of why it's so important to be sitting with another alcoholic in person, because, I don't know, it's what I need, and I think it's what you will need too today if you're in recovery or you're looking for recovery or if you're a family member of an addict. We cover a lot of things, and Chris is an expert in a lot of this stuff, especially his own story of sobriety. So Chris Asikis is coming up, but first, Kevin Souza. All right, Chris.
Thank you, Mike.
I want to start off by asking you this question. Simple enough. What's your sobriety date?
Sobriety date is 7/11 of 2010.
Okay. Now, I've heard that before because I got to know you through 12-step meetings.
Yes, sir.
And you're the kind of guy who, when you talk, you make it look easy. But that's because you work a really strong program. If I had to guess, you're constantly in action. You're helping people a lot. But it wasn't. First of all, it's simple, not easy. The program, right?
Right.
But for you, it wasn't always that easy. Your life, I mean, you hit a major league rock bottom that you're going to share with us. But I want to take me back to your childhood. What was it like? Where did you grow up? Did you grow up in West Texas?
So I grew up in this area.
You grew up in Waco?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was born in El Paso, but then family, we were living in Dallas. We moved to Dallas, and then parents split whenever I was 5. Okay. And so stayed with my mom, and we were actually in Cranfield's Gap.
Oh, yeah, that's not too far from here.
Yeah.
That's where What's-His-Face is from. The guy who, what's the Kevin Costner show, Zach? Yellowstone. The guy who wrote Yellowstone is from there.
That's
awesome. Yeah. Tyler, whatever.
They have
Tyler
some big name people. They got a lot of land out there.
Yeah.
But yeah. So I lived there, and then ended up going through school in Clifton, Texas. And so, oldest of 3. My mom's a single mother, school teacher for some of that, and remarried, and had a bunch of step siblings, just chaos. But then they ended up splitting. But yeah, so like hometown for me is Clifton.
Okay.
But this area for sure.
All right. Well, I'm not going to brush by that. You said chaos. Like, what was some people have positive chaos, like a lively home, or some people just have chaos, or some people have somewhere in between.
I mean, it was not what some of us would grow up, I would say, being in recovery. I'm blessed in that, like, I don't have that immediate family member with substance use issues. And so, but yeah, it was just a bunch of kids in one spot. Yeah. In that there was 3 of us, and then when my mom remarried, there was 4 other step siblings in the same home.
Where were you in the pecking order?
So I was the oldest of my mom's 3, right? And then I was the youngest of the rest. So one of them was like almost just a little bit older, but we were in the same grade. So yeah.
Did you find that growing up as the family got bigger, right, was it easy for you to disappear and get lost in the shuffle, to kind of go do your own thing?
Yeah. I mean, it was really easy to do that because like we were kind of isolated. We had a bigger house, and so like we got to just kind of do our own thing. Only if there was blood or like broken bones would the parent show, and then it was like, oh crap, we're in trouble.
Yeah, we're around the same age. I can relate to that, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so we were kind of doing our thing, they were doing their thing. But yeah, I would say, just ups and downs through that.
Yeah.
My mom remarried whenever I was 8 or 9, and then divorced whenever I was like 16 from that second marriage. And so just changes at different points of time. Going and seeing my dad, but that it was just different, and not to the extent that I would say like growing up in the in active alcoholism in the home. Although my stepdad did turn up to have his own concerns as well, but he kept that pretty closeted. But yeah, so I would say like two of my step brothers, they ended up struggling with substances, and so that did start kind of coming up as I was getting older and kind of seeing all of that unfold. So a little bit of it, but not but
when you were growing up, did you were you predisposed? Like, I guess not predisposed. Were you introduced to substances by your older stepbrothers or stepsisters? Or
not really?
Okay.
Not really. I kind of discovered that on my own. And as far as looking at like how that happened, I feel like even though it's not in my immediate family, it is definitely, in my extended family. And so I think I was that loaded gun.
Dude, me too. I had no doubt.
Ready to go.
Like the moment, especially looking back, and you're a pro. I'm a pro in my own recovery, but you're a pro in both your recovery and in the field.
Right.
But I mean, the moment I had my first beer, it was a spiritual awakening. I was telling lies. I was feeling better about myself. I felt like I belonged. I went from way below the radar to way above it. What was your experience like?
Yeah, definitely. I would get a hold of some alcohol here and there, right? But it was smaller amounts. And so really, it felt great, but I still had to keep it under wraps. But the first time I really just got to pour it on, right, and just go nuts, absolutely. I was at a house party and did the whole I'm over here but I'm not there, and convinced all my buddies, and we were actually here in Waco. And I don't know what house it was, whose house it was, but man, we just threw them back, and I do not remember a whole lot of that night. And I just know that I drank until there was nothing left.
Yeah.
Nothing left.
I can totally relate. When we went over to a buddy of mine's parents' house, and it was we're going to get drunk, and we drank not Jack Daniels, but something called J&B. And we drank the whole thing, and I woke up in the morning. It was like a brown liquor. They had drawn all over me. I was probably a freshman in high school.
Yes.
And,
yes.
I had done that charade, my parents, I'll be over here. Which is like a whole thing. That's normal, but it's also the beginning of the lies and I'm supposed to be here. And I was very scared of my parents. My dad was a pretty, they were sort of freaked out because the alcoholism was in my dad's family, and they were just strict, but we were wild, my brothers and I. Were your parents strict or?
To some extent. My stepdad kind of, he would be a disciplinarian if things really got bad, but I didn't get into a whole lot of trouble. I was the good kid.
When was this experience you shared, by the way? How old were you?
I think that was the summer going into my sophomore year of high school. So I'm kind of a late bloomer,
for an alcoholic,
for our standards.
Yeah.
But it was off to the races from that point, and just a slow decline into consequences.
So how was high school for you? You're a straight A student.
Yeah, straight A student, athlete, doing great.
What sport did you play?
I was in football. We did track. That was probably my favorite sport.
So you were super active.
And tennis. I mean, it is Clifton, Texas, so it's like everybody plays, So I got to get some humility around that.
Yeah.
But as far as like the group and stuff, I was definitely part of the the athletes and folks who were there were definitely better athletes there than I was. But yeah, pretty much athletic. Really good in school. My only B came whenever I was like writing a paper for a buddy of mine. I think he was like, we had some deal around alcohol involved. Like he was going to get me a whole bunch, and I wrote his paper for him. And I didn't spend as much time on mine, and I got me my only B in high school. He got an A, So I self-sacrificed, right? From the beginning. But yeah, it was good. Very much that double life, man. And going to church on Sundays, and then, just trying to get out from my mom, who was very strict or very, very anxious about what, when she started to sense some things that were happening. But yeah.
So she could tell she was on to you.
Mm-hmm.
Are you close with your mom now?
Yes.
Okay,
yeah.
so she.
But we were not. Yeah.
Me too. Same exact thing with me. My mom and I are like this, right? We're so tight.
Mm-hmm.
But back then, we would have been if I could have got my stuff together, but that just wasn't.
No.
Well, wasn't the story.
Yeah.
At that point.
It was tough. That slow progression and really struggling with alcohol and all kinds of other stuff, right? Like. It was tough. I mean, I had to keep up appearances and lies and deceit and sneak. Man, I would push my car down the road so far, so that she wouldn't hear that thing.
Way.
Take it off. She could wake up just like nothing, right? And I mean, she could smell cigarettes or like weed or alcohol in my breath like nobody's business. I had to be very, very sneaky.
Now, do you think was there an inherent worry about, hey, I got to keep an eye on Chris for whatever reason he might have like a bit of a reaction to the drinking and drugging? Or
they had no idea.
Okay.
My family had no idea what they were getting into.
Okay.
Right. And I didn't either. Right.
Yeah.
I was as clueless as they were.
Any consequences in high school?
A little bit.
Yeah.
My senior year, I got popped twice with drug. Actually, they drug tested me 3 times. I was the only
Your
person
parents
that.
Did.
No, it was the school for extracurricular activities. Right, you were required to be subject to random drug tests. Right,
I wouldn't have done anything.
Right. Well,
outside going to school.
Well, it's a really a well thought out method. Because then I failed 2 of those.
For what, pot or
pot? Yeah, okay. Yeah. The lab called my mom and said, "Hey, we just want you to know your son just tested for the highest level of THC we've ever tested here." And I was really proud of that at the time.
What year was this?
This was 2005.
So you're junior or senior?
Senior year, yep. Okay. And so I got a lot of consequences. Couldn't play my senior year track or tennis. Couldn't go to senior prom. I was already in school like half days, for some of the days. And then you took away all of the athletics. Like, what do you think I was going to do with all that time? All right. My mom's working. She can't keep it. Like, if anything, that just opened more doors for me to go deeper.
Were you like, for me, once they say marijuana is not, whatever.
No.
For me.
That's not accurate.
For me, I certainly was addicted. And when I started to smoke, and I realized it was working for me, I wanted to do it all the time. Absolutely. Like marijuana. So I was smoking, all day long when I could. Was that a similar experience for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And people talk about drug of choice or whatever that may be. Like, the only thing that was ever constant for me was cannabis. Like, that was always going to be there. And just a consistent staple of my daily activity for, 6 years, 7 years, pretty consistent.
So what happens? I know you went to Texas Tech?
So once I got sober, I did.
Okay. So let's go back. So high school. Your senior year, clearly there's some stuff going on. What happens? Is there a turning point there where we level up and it's like, wow, I like this a lot and it could get me into trouble?
Yeah, there was no self-reflection happening. Yeah. I didn't have that self-awareness. I was I was just running and gunning, man. I was chasing the next drink, and just anything to change the way that I felt. And like, I mean, I knew that I needed to go to college. I was supposed to go to college. I did. I applied. I went to University of North Texas.
So you went to UNT. So
yes.
You go to school.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And pretty much had the worst freshman year I think you can have.
Like how so? Like grade-wise or
all of the above.
Yeah.
All of the above. I was not a good roommate. And got in a lot of trouble. So I got arrested twice while I was there for possession of controlled substance for weed. First time, got popped, had a headlight out, and then apparently this was told to me by the detective. So apparently the university suspected me of dealing, and so the university hired a private investigator to monitor me for the next several months, and ended up busting me and 3 other friends at a park, at about 9-10 o'clock at night, and charged every one of us with possession of 1 gram of marijuana.
So dude, I'm going to stop you right there. This is the best ever because, okay, as I understand, you were just such a pothead.
Yes.
And you weren't dealing.
No.
Can
I was way too
Let me tell
too
you,
much of a user
so
to do that.
So I was this is amazing. So junior year at University of Richmond, I was a complete pothead, right? And a buddy of mine, it was my sophomore year, we went to East Carolina. And we gotten somebody gave us like an ounce of weed to smoke. Yeah. We took it back to school. Somebody had some of the weed we had and got caught with it. We'd given it to him, or he took like a dime back, whatever. Yeah. And so he was like, yeah, these guys brought this weed back from East Carolina. So they thought we were dealing. Same thing. I had these cops breathing down my neck. Now, I was in a different scenario because I was there for football, and I couldn't play because I had a heart problem. So the coaches were like, dude, what is your deal? Like, if we're going to have to throw you out. Like, what is happening here? And same deal, dude. Like, those kind of consequences early on in college where it's like, this thing is stalking me, right? Even though I wasn't dealing, I was still, obviously, clearly something was happening with me and this stuff. It would become the focal point of my life.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Just a complete loss of everything we had, worked for to that point. I mean, I got called into this. I had a class of like 150 students. Got called into the office at the beginning of the semester for my chemistry professor, and was just like, "Oh my gosh, I just wanted to meet with you. Like, you're doing so well. Like, you're going to do great in my class. I just want an opportunity to meet." Just really impressed with where I was academically. By the end of the semester, like, she accused me of cheating, which I just didn't know what I was doing, and some other guy was copying me. But I bombed the class. I failed the course, right? Because there was no holding back. There wasn't my mom like being the buffer, the barrier to me doing the things that I wanted to do. And so to go from top of my class, towards the top of my class, doing super well, to all of a sudden being arrested multiple times. I tried to take a test for somebody,
Why are you taking tests for everybody?
I needed some more drugs, man, and he said he was going to give me a lot more. He did actually, but I got caught. I got falsifying.
So you go to UNT? Did you take a class for somebody else, or
it was not just a regular test. It was a math placement test, so it would have provided college credit. So it was kind of a big deal, right? Like they were not happy with me, but I got falsifying documents and presenting false identification to an academic institution put on my permanent academic record, right? So every school I ever had to go to.
You don't think sobriety can work for you and change your life here? Now I'm talking to a guy that works in higher education.
Yes, I know.
I'm looking at 1, 2, 3, 4 degrees. Like I
went to 5 different schools after that. I had to explain every time, like, what is this? Right? I have to write this stupid letter to say, like, listen, this is what happened. This is why. Like, I made some really poor life choices. Yeah. And I mean, that stuff followed me. And because it was the university involved, like those charges, the possession charges were also a part. So I can't like explain. Like, it's
did it hurt anymore? Now I'm getting into the weeds, but that it was a state school. Did that have anything like? Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I was pretty shocked. Like, I was pretty frustrated, man. That my tuition helped get me busted.
So this stuff starts to happen. Did you finish school or did you?
No, I tried to transfer to a junior college and try to keep it together. Got put on probation, and like I went through treatment. I forgot I went to treatment for like a decade. It was like like way later on. I was like, wait, no, I went through an IOP. I don't even remember that.
You didn't even remember.
I didn't remember. But yeah, I had to go through all of that.
How'd you end up in the IOP? Just trouble.
So I failed a drug test, like he didn't test me for a few months. I was like, you know what? I think I'm good. Went in there a little stoned, and he was like, yeah, we're taking a drug test today. I was like, no, we're not. Like, I'm not going to pay $10 for you to tell me I'm dirty, man. So I had to go take those classes and then some drug offender classes, and I was, not doing great, and just the song and dance. I don't know. Folks who've been on paper understand. It's like you smoke weed, do all the crazy stuff for 2 weeks, and then just drink alcohol like a fish for 2 weeks, right? Yeah. And just try to clean it all out of my system so that I could test clean whenever I would go in, and somehow made it through like 18 months probation of that. And then once I got off of it, man, all bets were off.
When did you level up to other drugs? Like, you don't have to get into like the blow by blow, but I know that's part of your story.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's easier for me to talk about, like, there's just to name the drugs I haven't done, right? Yeah. Just like PCP and crack cocaine, like anything else, like absolutely. And so, I mean, coke had gotten really bad at the end of high school, and then there in college, got hooked up with a buddy doing heroin, and did my whole heroin run, and that was terrible
in college.
And then meth came around at that age, at that time too, and so it was I was just a trash can. LSD, mushrooms. I got chased on. I had a foot pursuit when I was on mushrooms and LSD. That was It was verified too. It wasn't just me. But it was crazy, man. It was complete nuts.
What's happening to your relationships with people? With members of the opposite sex, like how is that like playing out for you? Because for me, I again, like, I'm comfortable talking to you. I'm always like bringing up my stuff. Like, alcohol and drugs were a key component to any relationship I had of the opposite sex, for sure. And then ultimately, my guy friends were doing all the same stuff I was doing. Yeah. If you didn't party or drink like I did. Yeah, sure, I'd see you at a party or something, but we weren't hanging out together like all day. If you were hanging out with me all day, we were getting high.
For sure. Yeah. Absolutely. So it was quite a culture shock, shell shock to get to a big college, with 35,000 students. And I grew up in a town of like 2,000 people. Yeah. Right. So I was just like, oh my God, like I knew the life story for every classmate I had. I didn't, I wasn't versed in like meeting new people. Like that's just, it was tough. So where did I go? Straight to the stoners, right? Because they're the most accepting group, and they're really nice. And so very quickly, like that's who I fell in line with. And then, in that circle, that's where you start running into the other harder stuff, I don't prescribe to the gateway drug thing at all. Just simply that there's, you get surrounded by some of that. You start making new connections, and then boom, that's where you are. And so, like, most anybody I was really spending any length of time with was doing the same thing. And then relationships, I don't know. I always, at least at this stage, I was dating like the good girls who didn't do any of this stuff, maybe drank a little bit, but
were they like trying to save you? Like, hey, what's going on? Like, get it together?
A little bit of that. Little bit of that. It was not good for sure. And so very, very unhealthy relationships there. Family relationships just falling apart, just trying to distance myself. Like, I was trying to go to school for 2 years, and I visited home twice during that time, just like, and I'm 2 hours away. It's not like I'm halfway across the country. I just didn't, it gets in the way of my plans. Right. Yeah. And so, just nothing. No motivation to try to keep that up unless I needed money.
So we're in July now when people listen to this, who knows what month it'll be, but August of 2024, which is a couple days away, that month you will have 14 years, right?
Just got it. Yeah.
Just got it.
Yeah. So 7-Eleven. So just had a few weeks ago.
So you just had it. So
I just got my chip.
Years.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you got sober as a young man. What precipitates this rock bottom for you? where you're willing to go to any lengths?
Yeah. It was a combination of things. It's a good question. I wish I could spill it out perfectly, but I guess there were several things. I was working a really good job, right? I was working, and getting promoted, and it was a potential career path, and that was looking great. And I relapsed in the middle of it, and just
How long had you been sober for?
I call it dry. Twice in my journey in this thing, I got 7 months twice.
Okay.
Something about unlucky number 7. And so this last time, I was terrified to get 7 months sober. Oh my gosh, I was freaking out. But
why
yeah,
did you call it dry?
Because I was not working the recovery like I am now, or like I did, this go. And I had a sponsor, was going to meetings, doing service work, all of that, but I wasn't working the steps. I had a sponsor who was out of town a lot, and 7 months in, and we were still reading the book and Bill's story. Right?
Was that around here?
It was, and I'm still friends with my sponsor, and he's a great guy, old timer. Had at the time had 20 plus years, but there was another guy who was sitting there every meeting, who could have sponsored me, but for some reason I didn't have the guts to say, like, hey, I need to work with this guy who has 4 years. And in my mind, I'm like, I'm special. Right. So it's like this weird, like, pride yet fear of like having to tell someone like, hey, I need to work with this guy, And so, made a big mistake that I learned from, thankfully, just that sponsorship's no joke, right? And that if I'm not getting what I need, then I need to find somebody who is available, right? And that's the number one thing for me, someone who's available. And so yeah, that was a time where I was trying to do everything right, but there was that one piece that was missing. And
what led up to, this tour of duty, like the first or second 7 months? Was there treatment before that?
Yes. So first treatment was when I was 20 years old.
Okay.
Down in Hunt, Texas, a big treatment program down there, and had a good experience. Was really great. Things were pretty scary before that happened. I was up in Dallas, and just some really questionable characters, some shady things, people who just you don't want to really hang around with, and a few experiences really kind of freaked me out. I was like, this is not good. Like that, all of a sudden this party is looking a little dark. Yeah. Right. Like I'm not sure I'm going to be safe anymore doing this with these people. Right. And so I'm going to reach out for help, and ran home and freaked my family out because I finally came clean, like, honestly, of what was going on.
Could they tell when they saw you right away, like physically, or?
Yeah. I mean, when I went to treatment that time, I was 6'2", 138 pounds. Wow. Okay. Like walking, talking skeleton.
Yeah. And you're just like meth, all that. Yeah.
Yeah, meth, heroin, and coke, just everything. I was not really sane at that point. I had a lot of paranoia going on, and just like, just not sleeping, high amounts of substances, not really eating much, just because I didn't have much money. I was having to just hustle, and
I get it, dude.
And so, like, that was I got freaked out enough to reach out for help there. But then had to get like medically stabilized, then go to treatment, and that was not fun. But
do you believe this first for you, that was what you needed, like even though it didn't take, right? And I never say to anybody, because it's different now. Like, go out and try some controlled drinking. Like, no. I'm not living in that world. Like, the stakes are too high. Yeah. You never want to say go back out. But at the same time, like, there were certain things, it took me 10 years to get a year. Mm-hmm. So there were things that happened along the way that were just kind of implanted in my mind that once I was ready, absolutely ready, it kind of all was still there. Yes. In a way,
Right. And I the education I received about what was going on with me was like earth shattering. Yeah. The first message I heard was actually in like this like stabilization / psych unit. And they brought a meeting in, and I was like, holy cow, these guys are talking my language. Like they understand. They have this book that was written a long time ago that speaks to me. And like, I remember calling my family, like, there was these guys and they were talking about this, and I got to get this book and blah, 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 blah. Like, this is, They need to. I think I'll be able to drink normally now. That's what I was hoping. I thought might happen. But because being 20 years old, abstinence was like a 4-letter word. Like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
Like, that's not that, alcoholic. What?
The age thing will get you drunk again and could kill you. Because for me, I was 27 the first time I tried to stop, and I still had to be a part of. Like, I still had to be around my friends. Then I stopped drinking, and then I was like, oh, well, I'll just smoke weed. And it's like, I couldn't
marijuana maintenance.
Yeah, I couldn't ever detach. I couldn't ever completely get away from it. Until I did, right? Until I was so desperate that I was willing to do anything. Now, you go back out at 7 months the second time. What happens to you that when you come back, you're ready to no longer be dry, but to be actually sober?
I think it was the full acceptance of my impending doom.
I kind of remember you telling the story.
Yeah.
And I don't want to tell tales out of school, but
no.
You relapsed for a long time, right? Like, it was like, I'm going to do this, or you planned it out, right?
Yes.
Right?
So that's
where Lubbock comes into my mind.
Yeah, that was losing my first 7 months.
Okay.
My first 7 months, I was like, I'm going to go have this weekend with this girl who I helped get sober so I could date her. Right, which did not work out.
100% get it, though.
Yes, and so she's sober today, so that's great. But we were not good for each other. But yeah, we were, she had relapsed, and I was like, oh, that's not fair. Let's plan a trip to Austin. Just get it out of her system this one weekend, and that weekend turned into 6 months of just like terrible use. Like, I tried I got so many 24-hour chips, man, of just trying to stop and not being able to. Like, I did not want that to continue. And once I opened that door again, there was just no shutting it. And it was absolutely miserable that time. And so, yeah, another almost like divine intervention act of God to get me out of that, to get me sober again. And then that next 7 months, right? But then twisted off again. That second, losing my second 7 months.
Twisted off, right? So
yeah.
What happens when you lose that second 7 months?
So just chaos, because I had a whole bunch of money saved up, and I spent all of it in a matter of weeks. And just, I went into treatment 2 months maybe after relapsing, and I tested hot for 5 different substances. I had got a gun pulled on me and broke into somebody's house. I had just all kinds of consequences. My family got freaked out again, got kicked out, and it was, lost that really good job that was supposed to go down horribly. It was really, really humiliating. And so, yeah, just lost all of those things. People were like, lose my number, quit calling me all the time. Just kind of unemployable, no relationships, just hated myself, hated everybody else. Just no hope, man. Just completely lost any hope. And yeah, going back to treatment, it was really just like, maybe I can just get my stuff together just for, a little bit longer, put some meat on my bones again and survive.
So this was not like that. I love that.
It
wasn't like, okay, I'm going to go and get sober. It was almost like, it's so unrelatable to stop.
Yeah.
That you're like, I'm going to go do this, almost like dry out, whatever.
Yeah. And part that, that I hate to admit, but I think it's also important.
I think it's a great reflection, because sometimes I'll tell people, and again, you're the pro in this and you can talk about this, but it's like, just get them there. Whoever they are, just get them to a treatment facility, and the magic can happen.
Yes. Court-mandated treatment versus voluntary commitment to go to treatment, right? Go in willingly. Research shows outcomes are the same.
Really?
It doesn't matter what gets them there, right?
Really?
It's what happens there that matters, right? So, that's great that you came here on your own, on your own, but that doesn't mean anything, honestly, right? What are you going to do about this? Once once the cobwebs clear, are you going to grab a hold of this thing or not? That's the key versus somebody who has a judge looking over their shoulder, like going to put you away. Like it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Recovery and addiction, all that stuff, consequences, a bigger stick, a bigger carrot. It doesn't matter, right? Those things are just, they have no impact.
What happened to you?
So,
because you said it matters what happens there.
Yeah. And I was gonna get in the share. I think it's important. Part of what got me to treatment, as much as I hate to admit that, would be that the girl that I had relapsed with initially, my first time, she had gone back to treatment. So I was like, crap. No, I need to. So that was part of it, right? That was part of my motivation of like to make it a no-brainer. But I also knew like I had no other option. Like my family was like, "You're out." I got to go. I burned all my bridges very quickly, and so that was also another thing. Like, oh well, maybe So I went to the same treatment center as her. They wouldn't let me in until like she was done. Obviously, thank God. But anyways,
what treatment center?
This was in Centerport. Yeah, so this was Starlight. I went to Laha.
Okay. Well, congratulations to them. That was a pretty good move.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. They wouldn't let me go to IOP with her either, which was good, which was needed.
Sons of bitches.
Yeah, I know. And then the funny part.
All we want to do is be with other toxic people or people in early recovery.
And
whatever.
then for me to work for the next 10 years of like having to get in the middle of that crap.
Yeah, like that's
myself.
What you do now. Yeah. But I will say, Chris, there's nothing more captivating than somebody who has walked in your shoes.
Absolutely.
To be like, hey, look, let me tell you a story.
Yes.
And then you say that, and it's like, whoa, this guy's got my attention.
Absolutely.
And that's what people. That's what I can relate to.
Yeah.
I was the same way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like women, whatever. It was everything but getting sober.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That moved the needle.
Right.
Until finally, like you said, I was there. I had four walls around me. And it started to work.
Mm-hmm.
Like people came in. I started to get vulnerable, and I started to feel good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I was not a good client in treatment. We were jacking around. Had my buddy, my roommate, brought in some weed, and we were smoking. Man, that was dumb.
Did you get thrown out or like?
No, they never caught me.
Wow.
They caught another guy and kicked him out. But
by the way, just so people listening to this, you're the third person in a row that has joined me on this show that has either gotten kicked out of treatment or did something like very wrong in treatment where they didn't get caught.
Right.
So that just gives you for people out there, and the reason I say for people that have loved ones going through this stuff, it's pretty ugly, and it never looks perfect, right? It never goes like swimmingly.
No, not at all. It was like, Matt, my sober date's in the middle of my 30-day stay. No, yeah. I want to know those statistics. Like, what are the people who stay sober after using in treatment? I don't know, but I feel like it's pretty low.
Yeah.
But it's also a testament to what recovery can do, right? Mm-hmm. And so, a guy came and shared his story. Just told my story from a podium, and I was like, dude. The first 30 minutes, I was like, this guy's been following me around. This is kind of freaking me out a little bit. Like that, there were so many similarities about it. And then he got to his recovery piece, man, and you could really hear and you could see and you could feel, right? There was something that had changed him, right? There was some type of thing that he had gotten a hold of that changed his life. And it was very apparent. The dude was just freaking glowing. He had like 9 months sober at the time. And
that's a great example too. It really doesn't matter. Like when you have 19 years, 9 years, 9 months. Yeah. When you're on fire, you're on fire, and it's like the program God is speaking through you.
Yes.
And it doesn't matter who you are. You're literally a conduit for the message.
Absolutely. And I knew that he had it, and I grabbed him after that, and I said, "Dude, I'm gonna die." Like there was no doubt in my mind. Like I'm just. It was just a matter of time, and so I had nothing going for me. Like everything was in shambles. I had nowhere to go, and I just said, "Hey, man, like whatever you did, can you help me? Like whatever you want me to do." And that's when people say like go stand on your head, for and you'll get so like I would have done it.
Yeah,
I would have done it.
Well, that's how I got sober.
Yeah. And I didn't do anything without running it by him. And, you know, he dedicated so much time, you know, coming out while I was treatment,
Available.
afterward, just available, just
Yeah.
there, man. And knew the program, knew the steps, knew the book, and just, you know, man, we killed it, you know, just rocked and rolled through it. And, you know, everything started happening.
Well,
right?
yes. So what were some of the things that he shared with you that he did or that he wanted you to do as part of your recovery that were kind of cornerstones for you?
Yeah. So definitely doing like 10, 11, and 12. You know, you can't really sponsor, but just getting active with service, doing prayer and meditation every single day, being able to, you know, make meetings and connect with fellowship and hang around people who are sober. He was doing a lot of those things and really encouraged that. It wasn't anything that I hadn't heard before, right? It wasn't anything. I'd actually done all of those things previously in my other attempts. I'd never done all of them at the same time consistently, right? So there was no like, you know, it was just the willingness coupled with the messenger, right? And the conduit, right? And that willingness, you know, was just getting my ass kicked enough, and knowing that the tunnel was getting darker and darker. And I really was not thinking there was any light at the end of that. And so, yeah, I had no other options. And you know, something else about getting into treatment early, I can tell you it might not have took for me in that first time, but my family did, right? My mom did. She got plugged up, you know, with family support groups and actually started one in my hometown in Clifton, and that's still there.
No kidding.
Yeah, no. And so she grabbed a hold of this thing and started making that, like my grandparents have gone, my siblings have gone to meetings.
Your grandparents
for them.
have gone?
Yes.
Now, how
like,
unlike, I'm just guessing here, how unlike your grandparents was it for them to seek some kind of, you know what I mean, therapeutic treatment? Is
Yes.
was that outside of the norm for the culture of the time?
Maybe not. I think they've done better than most, but still very devout Christians, you know, deacon in the church, you know, just very involved and, you know, just very much.
So they were resistant then to this?
No,
okay.
no. Like, yeah, my grandpa would like take me to AA meetings and stuff when I was like trying to get well and encourage.
And is he still in your life or is he passed?
Yeah,
he is?
Yep, both
what
of them.
A freaking gift.
Got to spend a week up in Colorado with them at our family's cabin. You know, earlier this month. I can still say that.
Sheesh.
And so, like, very, very great relationship. And
I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Do you sit back like when you, and I know you do because you're dialed in, but what is that like when you feel that wash over you, that you're able to, because I believe like you just being with him is giving back all that he gave to you.
Oh, yeah.
You know, like just being there. Because really, I mean, hanging out with your grandparents, I think, like just spending time with them is like, that's the ultimate currency. But for you, after what you had been through with him and your mom, I would imagine that's pretty deep.
It very much so. And, you know, he was really involved whenever I was growing up. And, you know, I'd spend the summers with them, working on that cabin up there. And, you know, being on the other side of that, being active, being a participating member of the family, having my own children, so they're great grandparents, and like they just love them and want to see them, and but yeah, helping out, doing whatever we can to help them here, because they live in Clifton still, and then up at the cabin too, we always do stuff around that needs to get done, and so it's just a gift, and yeah. Even we took my son skiing for the first time over Christmas, and you know, he went up there with us, and we, you know, me and my brother and my grandpa, my son, you know, we just got, you know, four generations span wise, but we just took off and went up there, you know, and just had a blast. He's not, he taught me how to ski, and then I'm sitting there teaching my son how to ski. And I'm just, you know, I saw him going down. I just start crying, man. I'm just like, this is unreal. 32 years previously, he was showing me how to do that, and I'm up there doing that for my son at the same age. Like, just crazy.
But we didn't get here overnight. Like,
yes,
right. So like,
but
that's, and like that is the miracle. But there's so much work that comes with, you know, with recovery, right? Like it's like I said earlier, like, and I didn't come up with any of this stuff, but like simple, not easy. Like, how did you continue to keep the ball moving after you left treatment? You're working with this sponsor, the guy who had 9 months, who spoke to you in rehab, and you know, you guys are both on fire. Like, what's happening?
Yeah. So I got out of treatment. My experience had been get out of treatment, you get sober, you know, you're dry or whatever, and then you get a good job, and then you relapse, and then you lose that job. Right? And that had happened multiple times. You spent all the
money you saved.
Yes.
And
so
told me.
My mom was generous enough. She paid for my first month's rent at this really rundown sober house. I mean, last house on the block, man. It was rough. We had people who like would almost just get off the bus, you know.
You got to want it in a place like that.
Oh,
you got to
man,
want it.
It was. I probably saw 100 guys coming out of that place in 6 months. Right, like that did not do well.
You were there for 6 months.
I lived there for 6 months.
Nice.
So she gave me my first month's rent, and I just said, I don't know how I'm going to pay rent, but I just got to work recovery. I just got to get the sober thing down. And so I spent 2 weeks of just going to meetings, just working the step work, just doing what I needed to do to stay sober. Right. I was scared to get money in my pocket. And then I, made my amends to my grandparents who came into town. And then some random guy called the sober house that night and was like, hey, does anybody there need a job? I was like, I do. That's me. And so, like, lo and behold, you do the footwork, and then, and then a door opens. And he was like, awesome. Be there at 5 a.m. I was like, okay, I'll do it. But, I was a manual laborer for a plastering company. We did, like, concrete work on walls. And I carried 5-gallon buckets. I built scaffolding. I carried 80-pound bags of concrete up, 6 flights of stairs all day. Like, that's what I did. And it was awesome. People were like, dude, you working out, bro? I was like, no, I'm just working, Like, I'm just working.
You feel great at the end of the day. I mean, you're probably just sleeping like a baby.
Amazing. Yeah. And, my coworkers, like my foreman was hopped up on pain pills. One guy was an alcoholic. This other guy was a coke dealer. Everybody's drinking, and I'm just in the lion's den, man, just surrounded by it. And I was almost 24/7 in a state of prayer, just constant, just like this ongoing, consecutive, like, God, help me stay sober in this moment. God, help me to do this job. The guys on the site
on the jobs know you were sober?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they easily made me the designated driver. So I'm driving, I'm like barely sober, like a month sober, right? Yeah. And I'm driving this like Dodge Dually stick shift, right, with a trailer down San Antonio highway. I live in Kerrville, but we had to drive back and forth to San Antonio through 5 o'clock rush hour, right?
Yeah.
And I'm just like, this is nuts, this is like $100,000 worth of vehicle and equipment and all these guys, and I'm just 22 years old, barely sober, just driving this thing and trying to stay sober one day at a time.
I found myself growing up like in the recovery house and in the job, right? Like working at the fast food place.
Yes.
It sounds like you did too. Like, because honestly, like in situations like that before in my life, if I'm going to drive a lot of people around and it's a place I didn't know and maybe there's nerves involved, well, I'm certainly going to be hopped up on something. And it's going to make it easier or enjoyable, or maybe it won't and I'll overshoot the mark. But like that's what my brain told me, that I needed something to do anything that was out of the norm or difficult. Now you're doing it like whatever stress or anxiety you have, you're literally driving the stick shift through it, right?
Yes. It was unreal, man.
Yeah.
It was unreal. The other thing, one of the job sites was we're not sure, they wouldn't tell us exactly what the purpose was, but it was a government building, either the NSA or CIA. It was a cryptology building where they stored like all their servers and did like cybersecurity work. Well, we had to work on these guys' roofs, right? And so, I mean, they did security checks, bomb checks, right? They checked everybody like before you went onto the job site. We get up on the roof, and they have these armed guards with M16s just staring at you while we're working on this roof, and we're right next to the Air Force Base right there. And so there's like Blackhawks, jets and stuff just flying over us at all times. And I'm up here on this like armed. I'm like, these are the guys who are looking for me all the time, right? Like, and I'm on the roof, and barely sober, right? And I interpreted that as like, nobody's looking for me, number one. And God has a sense of humor.
You're starting to see the signposts.
Yes.
Right? Like when you buy in, that's what happened for me.
Yes.
Like, I can't speak for you, but like I was, when I started to commit and do whatever I needed to, or whatever it took, I started to have those moments too. Like, oh, this is where I'm supposed to be. Like, this is right.
Yeah.
When did you realize you wanted to get into the field of mental wellness and alcohol and addiction recovery?
It had always interested me from the first time, and doing enough psychedelics are going to be interested in psychology. But it had always interested me in therapy. Part of that was maybe self-diagnosis and being curious and the substances, sure. But first time going through treatment, I just remember being surrounded by some amazing people, right? And just counselors and stuff, and some of them were amazing. I also had some experiences that were not. My mama got me to a therapist here in Waco when I was in high school still, and I spun him like a top, dude. Like, he was calling my mom, telling her to back up and leave me alone, right? Like, I had this guy convinced that I was fine. Like, it's funny, he goes to my church now, and I'm like, oh.
Did you ever give the guy an amends? Not that you owe him one, but the reason I ask is because I have a similar story. We should probably talk offline.
Right.
There's a guy, Dr. Moralia, outside of Philly, who I just worked this guy, and not that he gives a shit, but I had him buying into my BS. Like, people just thought I couldn't get out of my own way. They did, or he thought. He didn't know that there was such a depth with, he's prescribing me meds and stuff. I'm out of my mind,
yes.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
So you had experiences pro and con.
Yes. And then a guy showed up, right? It was right around when I had 7 months sober. And that job I had ran out. They just ran out of work. And, I was kind of the new guy, so they cut me. I was the only sober one, but okay. And I wasn't sure what I was going to do. I had to
How'd you respond to that? Your first piece of humble pie or defeat in sobriety?
It was tough. And I'm grateful that I had, a program sponsor and people around me to lean on. And I had to pawn some stuff sober in order to pay rent, right? To stay and to get food and just the simple stuff, which was so humbling to me.
That's amazing. Yeah.
I called my mom and I was like, hey, this is the deal, and I'm doing everything right, and I'm finally being honest with you, and I have been for all of this time, and and can you help me out? And she was like, working her program, and just said, well, have you prayed about it? And I just about threw that cell phone. I was so pissed. I'm finally doing the right thing. And so I had to go pawn some stuff, right? And because, I knew how to get by, right? My pride, whatever it is, man, I'm so grateful for that. But yeah, I've been, for the most part, there was
that's an amazing
insurance,
story.
Cell
about
phones.
your mom.
Yes.
That's amazing.
Amazing moment.
And do you as somebody who's an advocate and in the recovery field today, do you stand by that? When you're talking to somebody's relatives, because like we just talked about, we could talk the balls off the pool table.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We could figure just about anything out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really trying to help them, figure this thing out. And I'm so glad, because for the most part, since 22, that it's been all me figuring this thing out of how to make it. And that's a big deal. That's a big deal. I mean, I know grown men who are not in that position to be able to, take care of themselves or figure that out, or have a sense of learned helplessness, right? And to be able to look back and to take pride in the things I was able to figure out and to accomplish, and to not have to always rely upon other people to figure it out or fix it for me.
How do you stay in that? So you have, you got a wife, right, who's wonderful, who I know, right? I can say that. Yeah. She's in recovery.
Yeah.
You have 2 beautiful kids. How do you stay in that place you just mentioned, right? The person who's willing to, hey, if I have to, I'll pawn some stuff, right?
Yes.
That's the ultimate like smash of the ego.
Right.
To now you're this guy with all this beautiful wife, beautiful kids, beautiful job, all this great stuff going on. How do you stay centered and grateful, right?
Gosh, yeah.
Because you mentioned that. Because again, I'm kind of asking for myself because I don't want to say resting on my laurels because that's not being fair to myself. But I did some crazy stuff to stay sober in the first 18 months, 2 years of my sobriety and recovery. And I still do today, right? But there was such magic in that, those early days, you know?
Right.
How do you capture that today?
It's but a glimmer, right? It's so hard. It's so hard, right? And it's tough. Just in the work that I do now, it's even changed in that regard. Because if you're working in treatment, right, first off, I knew like my recovery was separate from that. But I also was in this space of like seeing alcoholism and the end results of that day in and day out, right? Of watching new people come in broken, right? And seeing and doing all of that work. And I would say putting my whole heart into that, right? Of like being fully present and going above and beyond what's asked of me, as a person in leadership or counseling or whatever role I'm in, like, I would do more. And it was like the front lines, of just being there in that space. And so now that I'm in a little bit different, I work just as a general clinician with the university. And so like I still run into some of us, but it's not nearly the same. And so even that has been a shift to not be in the trenches in that way. And so, for me, I'm really blessed in that in some ways I tend to lean more towards, I've just always been just, maybe, the pride in reverse of like not being good enough, still this like imposter syndrome.
Yes.
More always leaning towards like, still amazes me the life that I have today and like I should not have this and feeling like I'm undeserved. That's where my mind always defaults to. Even though externally it may look differently, that's still like,
how do you get out of that default?
Right. It's like, therapy. No. It is a level of recognition. It's really this balancing act of ego, right? Of how do I stay right-sized, right? And not letting a bunch of successes and accolades and just doing well, go to my head and start thinking I got this versus, I'm a piece of crap or I don't deserve this or like, oh, woe is me. Like there's this healthy balance. And for me to stay connected, to stay plugged in, it's trying to keep that right sized. And I do that through the same things, right? Of like going to meetings, taking meetings into treatment centers, which has always been a staple of my recovery. Still continuing to do that, working with another person, right? I don't sponsor a lot, but I still got some that I work with, and that's been a consistent thing. Staying in contact with my sponsor, going back to the steps if I need to, right? Like there's a lot of things that I do, on a regular basis to stay plugged in. Not nearly what it was, right? And I don't know if that level of, work and self-sacrifice and time is I don't know. Maybe I should be doing that still. But I just don't know if it's feasible. I don't know.
No, I was connecting with a woman in sobriety who I knew from literally probably 15 years ago, right? And she was sober before, obviously before I was, right? Yeah. And I was messaging with her today. We hadn't connected in forever, and it was sobriety related. And I was like, "Are you going to meetings?" And she was basically like, "I kind of need to, right? Like I should." But she was like, 3 kids, a husband. Yeah. Like your life. You don't want to let the gifts of sobriety get in the way of the gifts of sobriety. But there's a way too. Like there's a thread right through everything. I think that's when I'm working the program that I need to work, it weaves through everything. Like if you ask my girlfriend, if you ask my coworkers, like, "Hey, how's Pete doing?" They can tell you.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Right. Ask my dog if she could talk. Trust me, she'd let you know. I come home from a meeting or an interaction like this, or a positive work interaction, and I'm playing with her, I'm messing around with her, I'm hey, what's going on with my dog, And then other times I come home and I'm in my head and I just walk in like she's not even there. You know what I mean? I lie in bed and I'll stare at the ceiling.
But
in the
you
dark.
don't kick her. You know?
No, I don't. No, I don't.
That's
I
it,
don't.
That's
yes, not
you know,
even close.
and that's like,
but that and that's the threshold, right? Like we don't go below a certain point, but there's a freedom for us.
Yeah, and there's that. Yeah, I mean, walking into a treatment center and sharing, spilling my guts there, and just trying to ignite that fire, transmit that, right? That just charges my spiritual batteries, man. You know, you can push me over with a feather walking out of something like that. You know, just it's so good. It's so it's I think that God has, you know, put enough things in my life where I am staying active in, you know, in fulfilling my responsibilities, while also knowing if I get a phone call, right? If I have a free lunch, right? When those opportunities come up, of jumping on that opportunity, and I'm grateful I have a supportive work, you know, where they know what, you know, who I am and what I'm about.
I feel like that's been a superpower for me. Like, and I don't, anybody's anonymity, that's their deal. For me, I had fallen so hard that it was like, if people knew I was alive, it was good that they knew I was sober, because there was a possibility I could connect with them when they want me around. Like you mentioned, I burned every bridge.
Yeah.
Like if I was around and I wasn't sober, people didn't want me around.
Yeah.
You know, like that's where I was. So that accountability that I carried with me everywhere and still do today,
right?
That has been helpful for me. One more thing before I let you go, because I've kept you a little bit.
For sure. Good.
How do you communicate? Because you're still on the front lines. You know, you're working on a college campus with young kids who, you know, they just don't know what they don't know. How are you able to communicate with them the power of some of the temptations and some of the deadliness of the drugs that are out there? Because nowadays you can be, I'm not trying to freak people out, but maybe I should. You can be somebody who's not an addict, and you lean over and you do one line of something and you're dead.
Yeah. Absolutely.
You know, like that did not happen for me. That was not, I mean, I certainly could have overdosed, but I wasn't going to take a pill. Like so many times, Chris, I put ecstasy or something in my mouth. I had no clue what it was.
100%.
You know, nowadays that legit is Russian roulette. It's like 50-50.
Oh yeah. I cannot fathom what it would be like. And I'm so grateful, you know, that I got sober when I did. 'Cause then that was when I straightened up, they were starting to get some of that synthetic cannabis and stuff out there, and that I worked in treatment, watched what that was doing to everybody. That stuff's just terrible. And
what does that do to people? What is
that was the worst client I've ever had in talking about withdrawals. I mean, not being able to sleep, not being able to eat, nauseous, vomiting 24/7. I mean, we just did our best to keep these kids hydrated. You know, like it was horrible. Just like borderline psychotic at times, you know, just making the brain go haywire.
Yeah.
And I mean, they're literally in a lab moving around some molecules, right? And just spraying it on stuff and sending it out for us to, you know, for people to experiment on.
Yeah.
You know, it was terrible. It's still around today. You still go to a gas station and get some, you know, some Delta 8 or Delta 10 pins or whatever. And it's just the same thing over and over, changing the different chemistry of THC and it's just horrible stuff. But yeah, the fentanyl is just unreal. And I mean, I've seen that here, like Waco, Baylor. They are not immune to that. I've seen that, and it is it is scary. It is so scary. I had a client that had a helicopter parent who was like, you know, I didn't hear from him for 4 hours, so I called Baylor PD. I was like, oh my God, what are you doing? And they found him OD'd, and he's okay, right?
Jesus.
I was like, holy crap, you know, made me think about, you know, demonizing the family for being over, like he just saved his son's life, right? Like, how can I? So that was kind of an aha moment for me, but yeah. For me, I have a lot of signs, and I generally speak openly about my recovery with folks I work with. I have, you know, big books in the room. I have the periodic table of the intoxicants.
No way.
Yes. So that's sort of a bunch of research. There's a film that was done, and they developed this periodic table of the intoxicants that shows it's the abuse potential, right, or addiction potential for all the various substances, right? And so I have it up there, and sometimes in conversations I'll be like, you're talking about a few of the things I have on my board here. What are you, let's talk, like, how familiar are you with, with substance use disorders? Like, like, this sounds like some risk. Like, do we need to kind of talk through what this could be, or like, is there some family history going on, And so just being able to start broaching those topics, right? It's still very different than the work I would do in treatment, where it's like, more hardcore, like in your face. And so, but yeah, definitely, I've had a few who are in recovery who I've worked with, folks who are, potential, they're the ones on the fence of like, man, this could get a hold of you, maybe not, but so planting some seeds, providing some truth, right? Speaking into like what this is and what it's not, dispelling shame, right? Yeah. Trying to like get out of this like process of like telling secrets, keeping secrets, like the family image stuff, trying to break through
not
those.
Our family couldn't. Nothing, or I can't say anything because it's just it would scar the family name
absolutely. And so I would just say being vulnerable myself, right? And being able to to try to speak to you're not going to scare them, right? But try to come with like well-informed, all right, approaches to this, right? And help somebody be knowledgeable about what they're doing, right? And if they ever found themselves noticing maybe some of these other things going on, just knowing that there's help, right? Knowing that recovery is possible, knowing that there's treatment available. Those are things I never knew, right? I literally had no idea that I was experiencing addiction, and that this is a treatable thing, and that there's programs since the 30s that were really helpful in helping people recover from this. And so, there's just still we've done so much better today as a society, but I still think there's so much more room to grow and in helping people to engage in recovery. And so, I try every opportunity I can to share that. And not only, I think, with those experiencing substance use, but the families, right? And these kids who are impacted directly from this illness.
They have
their
own story too.
Oh my gosh. It has been so empowering for me and that's a lot, like marriage and family therapy. That's my license that I'll hold in working with families for dealing with the impact of us, right? Has been such a welcomed, enjoyable, it's heartbreaking, and also just so much hope in empowering them and arming them with facts about what's going on and supporting them through that. Like it's just phenomenal. And so I get to do that in a lot of spaces as well. And that is so cool.
Well, thank you for doing it here in our space, dude. I can't thank you enough, Chris.
Thank you so much, Pete. It's been an honor and privilege to be here, man. And thank you for inviting me. And this has been so great.
See you around campus.
All right. Sounds
Both
good.
of our campuses.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Thanks, man.
Awesome.
Thanks so much for listening to The Payoff with Pete. Once again, I'm Pete Souza. And of course, we are part of the Rogue Media Network. All kinds of good podcasts you can find at roguemedianetwork.com. And of course, you can find this podcast and all those other ones wherever you get your podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, other spots like that.
This has been a Rogue Media Network production. Are you a podcaster? Let's talk podcast hosting. Are you tired of your current podcast host? Need real support in a community that gets it? At Rogue Media Network, we offer top-tier podcast hosting services to help you thrive. From hosting and distribution to dedicated support, we've got you covered. Starting as low as $25 a month. Join our community of passionate podcasters today. Contact us at hello@roguemedianetwork.com.